Have you ever had a moment in your life where everything changed in an instant? A second where your reality shattered and reconstructed itself completely different, where the before and after became so distinct it seemed like you were living separate lives? Imagine that, but multiplied by infinity. Imagine being alone in the desert, doing what you've done every day for 40 years, when suddenly you see something that defies all natural logic. A flame burning, consuming, but not destroying. A fire that burns but doesn't consume. And then, from the middle of that impossible fire, a voice calls you by name. Not just any voice, the voice that created the universe, that spoke and galaxies came into existence, that named the stars and knows every atom of creation. And that voice is speaking to you, calling you, summoning you. For what? For a mission so impossible, so absurd, so far beyond your capabilities that your first reaction is to refuse. Because you know who you are. You know your flaws, your limitations, your past stained with blood and shame. And now, God is asking you to liberate an entire nation from slavery, confront the most powerful empire of the known world, and lead millions of people through the impossible. This isn't just Moses' story. It's the story of how divine encounters destroy our smallness and force us to confront destinies we never asked for, but were always ours. If you want to discover how an ordinary man became the liberator of a nation, how a burning bush transformed into the turning point of all biblical history, and how encounters with God can still today detonate dormant purposes in you, subscribe to the channel right now. Because what you're about to witness isn't just ancient history, it's a pattern, a model, a revelation of how God works with broken, forgotten, and unprepared people to accomplish the impossible. And if it happened to Moses, it can happen to you too. Let's go back in time. Not to the moment of the burning bush yet, but to before, long before. To understand the magnitude of what happened in that encounter, you need to understand who Moses was when he arrived there. And the answer will surprise you, because Moses, at the moment of his greatest divine calling, was at the lowest point anyone could imagine. He wasn't a respected leader, he wasn't a recognized prophet, he wasn't even a free man in his own right. He was a fugitive, a murderer, a complete failure who had tried to do the right thing the wrong way, and destroyed everything in the process. Think about it. Moses was born under a death sentence. Every Hebrew boy born in Egypt during that period was marked to die before even taking his first breath. Pharaoh, terrified by the population growth of the Hebrew slaves, decreed systematic genocide. Drown all the boys in the Nile, eliminate the next generation before it becomes a threat. And Moses was born exactly in this context of absolute terror. His mother, Jochebed, in a desperate move of faith and courage, placed her 3-month-old son in a basket and launched him into the same river that should have been his tomb. And through a series of events that can only be described as orchestrated divine providence, the baby who should have died was found by Pharaoh's own daughter. The condemned Hebrew boy was raised as an Egyptian prince. Moses had elite education, royal privileges, access to wisdom and power that no other Hebrew ever dreamed of having. He was trained in Egyptian sciences, in the arts of war, in empire administration. He had everything. But he also had something else. He had divided identity. Because even being raised as Egyptian, he knew he was Hebrew. He saw his blood brothers breaking their backs under Egyptian whips while he enjoyed banquets in palaces. And this tension, this awareness of belonging to two worlds but not being fully accepted in either, grew inside him like pressure in a sealed pot, until the day it exploded. Moses, at 40 years old, saw an Egyptian taskmaster beating a Hebrew slave, and something inside him ruptured. Justice? Anger? Identity finally demanding recognition? He looked around, made sure no one was watching, and killed the Egyptian, buried the body in the sand, and thought no one would know. But violence has invisible witnesses. Actions have consequences that spread beyond what we can control. The next day, when Moses tried to intervene in a fight between two Hebrews, one of them threw the truth in his face like acid. "Who made you prince and judge over us? Are you going to kill me like you killed the Egyptian?" And in that moment, Moses realized three devastating things simultaneously. First, his crime wasn't secret. Second, he wasn't seen as liberator by the very Hebrews he tried to help, but as intruder, imposter, murderer. Third, Pharaoh would soon know and come after him. So Moses did what any terrified person would do. He ran. He fled from Egypt, from the palace, from his Egyptian identity, from his Hebrew heritage, from everything, and ended up in Midian, a remote desert where no one knew him and no one cared who he had been.
And this is where we need to understand something crucial. Moses spent 40 years in Midian. 40 years. Think about it. He was 80 years old when God finally called him at the burning bush, which means he spent half his life in self-imposed exile, tending his father-in-law's sheep, living as a nomad in the desert. The prince had become a shepherd. The man who had access to royal libraries now conversed with animals. The potential liberator of Israel was guiding flocks in endless circles under the scorching desert sun. And each day, each year, each decade, something inside Moses must have died a little more. The hope of meaning, the belief that his life mattered, the idea that he could still make a difference. 40 years is enough time for you to forget who you were and accept who you've become. It's time for scars to form so deeply you don't even feel the pain anymore. It's time to give up on dreams and settle for survival. And this makes what happened next even more extraordinary. Because God didn't call Moses when he was at the height of his confidence, full of youthful energy and princely conviction. No, God waited until Moses was completely broken, completely convinced of his own inadequacy, completely free of any illusion that he could do anything significant by his own merits. And then, only then, when Moses was in the place of maximum human weakness, God appeared. And this isn't an accident. It's a pattern. It's how God works. He chooses the weak to confound the strong. He uses the broken to accomplish the impossible. Because when clearly inadequate people accomplish clearly impossible feats, there's no doubt about who deserves the credit. So, it was just another day. Moses was doing what he did every day, guiding Jethro's flock, his father-in-law's, through the slopes of Mount Horeb. The monotony of routine, the predictable rhythm of sheep, pasture, water, rest. No expectations, no anticipation that something different could happen. Why would there be? 40 years had taught that today would be like yesterday, which was like the day before. The desert doesn't hold surprises, only heat, thirst, and silence. And then he saw it, a flame. No, not just a flame, fire, but strange fire. Fire that burned but didn't destroy. A bush, a common shrub, engulfed in flames that didn't consume it. And Moses stopped, because this didn't make sense. Fire consumes. It's its nature. It's its definition. Fire that doesn't consume isn't fire as we know it. It's something else. It's physical impossibility manifesting before mortal eyes. And here's something fascinating. Scripture records Moses' thought in that moment. He said to himself, "I will now turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush does not burn. I will turn aside." Think about those words. All the subsequent history of redemption depended on Moses choosing to turn aside. If he had ignored it, if he had thought, "Interesting, but I have sheep to care for," if he had chosen to remain on the familiar route instead of investigating the anomaly, everything would have been different. Israel could have remained enslaved. The Exodus might never have happened. The messianic line that would lead to Christ could have been interrupted. But Moses turned aside. He chose curiosity over convenience. He allowed the extraordinary to interrupt the ordinary. And when he turned toward the fire, when he took that step of investigation, God responded.
"Moses, Moses," the voice came from the middle of the fire, and Moses, terrified, responded, "Here I am." And then came the strangest command: "Do not draw near. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place where you stand is holy ground." Stop here. Think about this. Why take off sandals? What's the significance? Because this isn't about hygiene or cultural custom. It's about recognition. It's about understanding that you're stepping on space that has been transformed by divine presence. The ground under Moses' feet didn't change molecularly. It was the same sand, the same stones he had stepped on 1,000 times before, but God's presence had transformed it into sacred territory. And Moses needed to recognize this. He needed to understand that he was no longer in the domain of the common. He had crossed into the extraordinary. And you can't enter the extraordinary with the posture of the ordinary. You need to remove what separates you, what protects you, what makes you comfortable. You need to be vulnerable, barefoot, exposed. And then came the declaration of identity. "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." And Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. Understand the weight of this introduction. God wasn't introducing himself as abstract philosophical concept. He was identifying himself through relationship. "I am the God who made covenant with your ancestors. I am the God who promised. I am the God who sees. I am the God who remembers." And what was God remembering? The cry of Israel, the brutal oppression in Egypt, the broken backs under forced labor, the drowned children, the suffering that had lasted 400 years. And God said something absolutely crucial. "I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and have heard their cry because of their taskmasters. I know their sorrows." Surely seen, heard, know. 3 verbs that destroy the theology of a distant and disinterested God. God wasn't ignoring, he was seeing. He wasn't deaf, he was hearing. He wasn't oblivious, he intimately knew every pain, every tear, every unanswered cry. And now, in that precise moment, in time determined by wisdom that transcends human comprehension, God was intervening. "I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up from that land to a good and large land, to a land flowing with milk and honey." Come down. God was entering human history in a direct and dramatic way, not sending a message, not giving advice, personally descending to execute deliverance. But then came the part that destroyed any sense of security Moses might have been feeling. "Come now, therefore, and I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt." Wait, what? You just said you came down to deliver them. Why are you now sending me? And here's one of the most profound paradoxes of how God works. God operates deliverance, but uses human instruments. God executes miracles, but through flawed agents. God accomplishes the impossible, but summons inadequate people to be partners in the process. And Moses, hearing this summons, after 40 years of obscurity and failure, did what any sane person would do. He objected violently. "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh, and that I should bring the children of Israel out of Egypt? Who am I?" The most honest question anyone can ask when confronted with divine calling, because Moses knew the answer. He was nobody, an 80-year-old shepherd who had failed spectacularly the only time he tried to help his people, a fugitive with an arrest warrant in Egypt, a stutterer with speech problems who couldn't even communicate clearly, a man whose last attempt at justice resulted in homicide and exile. Who was he to stand before Pharaoh? Who was he to lead a nation? Who was he to accomplish the impossible? And God's answer is so profound you could meditate on it for a lifetime. I will certainly be with you. I will be with you. God didn't argue Moses' objections, didn't present a resume listing Moses' qualifications he had forgotten, didn't try to build self-esteem or confidence. He simply said, I will be there. Your inadequacy is irrelevant because my sufficiency is total. Your weakness doesn't matter because my strength is unlimited. Your inability is the perfect stage for my ability to manifest. I will be with you. And that phrase changed everything, because the question was never who Moses was. The question was who was with Moses. And when God is with you, impossibility becomes irrelevant. But Moses still wasn't convinced. He continued objecting. When I come to the children of Israel and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they say to me, what is his name? What shall I say to them? And here happens one of the most theologically dense moments of all Scripture. God reveals his name, not a common name, the name. I am who I am, YHWH, Yahweh, the name that means eternal existence, self-sufficient being, fundamental reality of all existence. I am, not I was or I will be, I am, eternal present, existence that doesn't depend on anything external, being that is the source of all being. And God was saying, this is who I am, and this I am is sending you.
But still, Moses resisted. But suppose they will not believe me or listen to my voice. Suppose they say, the Lord has not appeared to you. And God, with patience that should make us weep, began to give signs. Transformed Moses' rod into a serpent and back into a rod. Transformed Moses' hand leprous and then healed it. Promised to turn water from the Nile into blood. Miracles on demand. Supernatural validation. Divine credentials. And still, Moses had one more objection. "O my Lord, I am not eloquent. I am slow of speech and slow of tongue. I can't speak." And you can feel the frustration growing in God's response. "Who has made man's mouth? Is it not I, the Lord? Now therefore go, and I will be with your mouth and teach you what you shall say." And finally, when all rational objections were exhausted, Moses said what he had really been feeling from the beginning. "O my Lord, please send by the hand of whomever else you may send." In other words, please choose someone else, anyone, just not me. And here, Scripture records something shocking. So the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses. God became angry. Not because Moses was inadequate, but because Moses was refusing the only calling that could give meaning to all his past suffering. He was refusing the redemption of 40 years of obscurity. He was choosing the safety of anonymous shepherd over the glorious danger of being used by God to change history. But even in anger, God made concession. Aaron, Moses' brother, would be the spokesman. Moses would give the words, Aaron would speak them. It was compromise. It wasn't the ideal plan, but it was the viable plan given human resistance. And Moses, finally out of objections, out of evasions, out of excuses, accepted. He returned to his family, explained he needed to return to Egypt, and began the most impossible journey of ancient history. An 80-year-old shepherd with a wooden staff going to confront an emperor with an army of chariots. A stutterer with an assistant going to demand the liberation of millions of slaves. A fugitive murderer returning to the place of his crime to challenge the system that condemned him. Humanly speaking, it was suicide, it was madness, it was impossible. But here's what you need to understand. The encounter at the burning bush wasn't just about Moses receiving a mission, it was about Moses being transformed. The man who approached that burning bush wasn't the same man who walked away from it. Yes, he still had the same physical limitations. He still stuttered. He was still 80 years old. He was still inadequate by any human metric. But something fundamental had changed. He had encountered God.
not just heard about God, not just studied theology. He had been in the manifest presence of the Creator of the universe, calling him by name. He had seen the impossible, fire that doesn't consume. He had received calling, validation, promise, and presence.
And when you experience God in a direct and undeniable way, everything changes. Your circumstances may look the same, your limitations still exist, your fears are real, but now you know something that transcends all of that. You know that God is real. You know that God sees. You know that God acts. You know that God chooses to use broken and inadequate people to accomplish His impossible purposes. And you know that when God calls, He also equips. When God sends, He also accompanies. When God commissions, He also provides. "I will certainly be with you" isn't empty religious platitude. It's foundational promise. It's divine guarantee. It's the difference between impossible mission and divine mission. And this brings us to the deeper meaning of the burning bush, because that bush that burned but wasn't consumed was more than physical anomaly to capture Moses' attention. It was symbol. It was visual prophecy. It was theology in the form of flames. Think about it. Israel in Egypt was being consumed by oppression. 4 centuries of brutal slavery, forced labor, infanticide, unimaginable suffering. By any rational analysis, Israel should have been annihilated, consumed, destroyed. But they weren't. They remained. They survived. They even grew in number, despite everything conspiring against them. Why? Because God's presence was with them, like fire that burns but doesn't consume, intense trial that should destroy but somehow refines and preserves. And this isn't just historical truth about ancient Israel. It's timeless truth about God's people in every age. You may go through fire. The oppression may be real. The suffering may be intense. The pressure may seem unbearable. But if you belong to God, if divine presence dwells in you, the fire won't consume you. It will hurt, it will burn, it will test, but it won't destroy. Because the same God who was in the bush is in you. And divine presence transforms consumption into preservation, destruction into refinement, death into life. The burning bush also reveals something crucial about how God reveals Himself. He chose extraordinary means, supernatural fire, but in a completely ordinary object, a common desert bush. Not a magnificent tree, not an impressive monument, just a bush. This is intentional. God meets people in their ordinariness. He manifests in the midst of the common. He transforms the mundane into sacred by His presence. You don't need to be in an elaborate temple or planned mystical experience to encounter God. He can appear in your ordinary day, in your routine work, in your ordinary moment. And when He appears, He transforms everything. The commonplace becomes holy ground. The ordinary moment becomes extraordinary encounter, and you're never the same again. There's also depth in the command to remove sandals. Sandals protect. They create a barrier between you and the ground. They allow you to walk without being affected by what you're stepping on. And God said, remove that. Be vulnerable. Be directly connected. Feel the holy ground under your feet, because you can't experience the sacred while maintaining your protections. You can't truly encounter God while keeping safe distance. Genuine encounter requires vulnerability. It requires you to remove what separates you, what protects you, what keeps you comfortable and safe. It requires you to be barefoot before divine mystery, exposed, without defenses, open to be transformed. And think about the timing. God waited 40 years. Why? Why not call Moses at 40 when he was full of energy and confidence? Why wait until 80 when all hope seemed lost? Because God wasn't just preparing deliverance for Israel. He was preparing the deliverer.
and preparing someone for impossible mission requires deep brokenness. It requires death of self-confidence. It requires complete recognition of human inadequacy. It requires humility forged in the desert of failure and obscurity. Moses at 40 would have gone to Egypt trusting in his strength, his education, his abilities, and he would have failed spectacularly. Moses at 80 went to Egypt knowing he was nothing, but God with him was everything. And that difference in perspective made all the difference in the outcome. This means that if you're in a desert now, if you're in a period of obscurity where it seems God has forgotten you, if you're in brokenness that makes you question your value and purpose, maybe, just maybe, you're being prepared. Maybe the desert isn't punishment, but school. Maybe the obscurity isn't abandonment, but intubation. Maybe the brokenness isn't destruction, but construction of a foundation that can sustain the glory of what God is planning to do through you. Because God uses deserts to form deliverers. He uses obscurity to create spokespeople. He uses brokenness to prepare vessels that can carry His glory without destroying themselves with pride.
The burning bush also establishes the pattern for all subsequent prophetic encounters. Isaiah in the temple seeing God's glory, Ezekiel by the river seeing bizarre visions of cherubim and wheels, Daniel receiving apocalyptic visions, John on Patmos seeing the glorified Christ. All of them follow the pattern. God reveals Himself in a supernatural and undeniable way. The person is completely destroyed by the magnitude of the encounter. They recognize their own inadequacy. God commissions them for impossible mission. He provides validation, signs, assurances, and then He sends the transformed but still inadequate person to accomplish feats that can only be explained by divine intervention. This is the pattern. This is how God operates. And here's what this means for you today. The burning bush wasn't an isolated event in ancient history without contemporary relevance. It's revelation of how God works in every age. He still calls inadequate people. He still appears in ordinary moments in extraordinary ways. He still commissions missions that seem impossible. He still promises, "I will certainly be with you." And He still transforms shepherds into deliverers, fugitives into prophets, failures into founders of nations. Because the God of the burning bush hasn't changed, His methods haven't evolved, His character remains constant, and He's still looking for people willing to turn aside, remove their sandals, recognize holy ground, and accept callings that completely exceed their human capacities. The question isn't whether you're qualified. Moses wasn't. The question isn't whether you have the necessary skills. Moses didn't. The question isn't whether you failed in the past. Moses had literal blood on his hands. The question is whether you're willing. Willing to turn aside when God interrupts your routine, willing to recognize holy presence when it manifests, willing to respond, "Here I am," when the voice calls you, willing to accept impossible mission, trusting in the promise, "I will be with you." Because when you're willing, your inadequacy becomes the perfect stage for God's adequacy to manifest. And think about what would have happened if Moses had permanently refused. If his final objection, "Send by the hand of whomever else you may send," had been accepted by God as final answer, Israel would remain enslaved. The Exodus wouldn't happen. The 10 Commandments wouldn't be given. The tabernacle wouldn't be built. The journey through the wilderness wouldn't occur. The conquest of Canaan would be impossible. The messianic line would be interrupted. Christ wouldn't come. And all of this because an 80-year-old shepherd chose safety over obedience, comfort over calling, fear over faith. One refusal, one no, and entire redemptive history altered. This shows both the weight of divine calling and God's incredible grace in giving us real choice. But Moses said yes. Eventually, with fear, with objections, with conditions, but he said yes. And that yes changed everything, not just for him, but for millions of people for thousands of years. His yes liberated a nation. His yes established law that shaped civilization. His yes created precedent of a delivering God that resonates through all Scripture.
His yes was foreshadowing of the final yes of another who would say, "Not my will, but yours be done," and bring deliverance not just from physical slavery, but from slavery to sin and death. Moses at the burning bush points to Christ in Gethsemane, both confronting impossible missions, both feeling the weight of human inadequacy, both choosing obedience over comfort, and both changing the course of redemptive history. The burning bush teaches us that God specializes in impossibilities. He's not looking for people who can do the job. He's looking for people who can't, but are willing to trust that He can through them. He's not recruiting for positions you're already qualified for. He's calling you to destinies that will force you to depend completely on Him. Because when you accomplish something within your capabilities, you receive the credit. But when you accomplish something so far beyond you that the only explanation is divine intervention, God receives the glory. And God's glory, not human success, is the ultimate goal of every divine calling.
So here's the question you need to answer. What is your burning bush? Where is God trying to capture your attention with something that doesn't make natural sense? What anomaly in your life are you ignoring because it doesn't fit into your established routine? What divine interruption are you avoiding because investigating it would require you to turn aside from your comfortable plans? Because God still speaks, He still calls, He still commissions, but He doesn't force, He invites. And the quality of your life, the purpose of your existence, the meaning of your journey may depend on you choosing to turn aside, remove your sandals, and respond when the voice calls you. The burning bush burned for only a few minutes on that day thousands of years ago, but the impact of that encounter still burns today. Because when God meets man, when divine touches human, when eternity intersects time, the fire that's ignited never completely goes out. It continues burning through generations. It continues illuminating through centuries. It continues warming through millennia. And perhaps, just perhaps, there's a burning bush waiting for you. Not literal bush in physical desert, but divine moment in your ordinary life. Impossible summons in your current circumstances. Calling that completely exceeds your capacities, but fits perfectly into God's purpose for you. And if this journey through the fire that doesn't consume awakened something in you, if you felt the heat of that ancient calling touching your present reality, if you recognize that maybe God is trying to capture your attention through impossibilities in your own life, then don't let this moment pass without response. Subscribe to the channel right now, because we're only beginning to explore the encounters that transformed history and still have power to transform you. Each video is a burning bush of its own, an invitation to turn aside from your routine and investigate how God works, how He calls, how He empowers completely inadequate people to accomplish absolutely impossible feats. The fire still burns, the voice still calls, and you don't want to miss the next encounter that could change your life forever. Remove your sandals, you're standing on holy ground, and God has something to say.